I couldn't wait until Monday. I need to talk about the 9-game winning streak, 15-2-2 St. Louis Blues.
Hey, this is Brayden Chen.
Subscribe to Lock On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues. On today's episode of Locked On Blues, we're going to keep it short, we're going to keep it simple, but we're going to keep it real. The St. Louis Blues, following the break, have been 15-2-2, and they're currently in a 9-game win streak. Yesterday, they beat the Avalanche 2-1. Now, this was a game, Boucher was back, but Zach Bolduc scored, right? And Zach Bolduc has been absolutely phenomenal. And this is a player, by the way, that is going to be taking the NHL by storm. I mean, when you think about rookies, right? I know you think about Malcolm Celebrini, you think about Matvei Michkov, and I understand that, right? I do. However, this season, he has scored 16 goals, making him the third overall rookie leader in goals scored in a single season. And it's not just the fact that the Blues are winning, it's how they're winning. It's how this team is playing. You know, this is a team where a lot of people don't give them enough credit. You know, they don't have enough star talent, they don't have enough big names. Meanwhile, they have been defeating teams like the Colorado Avalanche. And I get what you're saying. Hey, Hale, you know, they beat the Nashville Predators 3 different games within 10 days. How is that a big deal? As I said prior, it doesn't matter the team that you're beating. What matters is the points that you're getting. And right now, the St. Louis Blues are racking up these points. And they're becoming one of the most dominant teams in the NHL. A team that people should be concerned about. And I'm not just saying people as in just the wild card race. I am talking beyond that. Because if this team is able to maintain the amount of confidence, the amount of enthusiasm that they're playing with, I have a really difficult time believing they're going to be one and done heading into the playoffs, which is such a crazy thing to think about due to how the Blues really did struggle throughout the season. The Blues will be hosting the Red Wings on Tuesday, followed by the Pittsburgh Penguins on Thursday. Again, the Penguins were a team that the Blues did lose to, and then the Blues will also be hosting the Avalanche on Saturday before taking the road, going out to Winnipeg for the Jets, the Oilers, and then the Kraken. And then finally, they finish at home against Utah. So these next couple of games are really important for the Blues, especially the Red Wings and the Penguins. Again, the Penguins are one of the worst teams in the NHL this season, so that is a team that the Blues should beat. However, those 3 games on the road that I mentioned against the Jets, the Oilers, and the Kraken could really decide the season, which is why they need to just continue this current push that they're in. And usually I'm not a person that says, hey, I'm happy with 1 point. But if it's the worst case scenario and the Blues are going to lose, I'd rather that be in overtime so the boys are able to get at least 1 point. At this point, I'm saying point a lot, but at this point, they really do need all the points that they can get because right now, and again, I am not counting out any of the other teams that are underneath the Blues at the moment because it's still, in my opinion, a closer race than many people think. You have the Blues at 87 points with 75 games played. The Vancouver Canucks are behind the Blues with 73 games played and 81 points. So, yes, they have 2 games in hand. You have the Calgary Flames who have 3 games in hand with 72 games played with 80 points. And I'm not trying to count out Utah. However, with 73 games played and 76 points, that's 11 points difference between the Blues and Utah, which is why for me, I just have a difficult time counting them in, even though it is still possible. Another thing that we need to talk about is the Minnesota Wild. They lost to the New Jersey Devils yesterday, so thank you, New Jersey. 74 games played, 87 points. So if the Blues get that win on Tuesday against the Red Wings, they will surpass the Wild if you hope that the Wild just don't win like they did in New Jersey. So let's go take a fast look, by the way, at the Wild's schedule because this is something where you need to just continue to watch. Tomorrow, so they hosted New Jersey yesterday, right? They're in New Jersey tomorrow. I get it, the NHL schedule, it's weird. So you have to hope that the Devils win that one. And then on Wednesday, they're in New York against the Rangers. So again, you just have to continue to hope that the Wild don't gain any points. Now, when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks, another team that you have to keep your eye on again today, they're playing Winnipeg. So you have to hope that Winnipeg wins. Again, Winnipeg is 50, 19, and 4 on the season, a really good team, because then the Canucks are going to be hosting the Kraken and the Ducks. So that is why today it is really important that Winnipeg does win and beat the Canucks, just due to the two teams that they're going to be playing that are not that great, with no due disrespect on that one. Then, of course, you have the Calgary Flames. And tomorrow they have the Avalanche, and then they have Utah. And what's really important to know is that yesterday the Flames lost in overtime to the Oilers. So again, as I said, those points, that makes me nervous. And the Flames, they have a player, Dustin Wolf, who has been absolutely phenomenal. Okay. And that's what makes me really nervous with him and Ned. I mean, people were talking about him winning the Calder, which is insane. So anyways, you have to hope that the Avalanche win in regulation tomorrow and that Utah ends up winning on Tuesday. Again, it is going to be a tough race to the playoffs. However, what I do want to say is this: the Blues have talent, right? Dylan Holloway is an extremely talented player that a lot of people, for whatever reason, kind of count out, right? Because again, maybe Dylan Holloway is not projected to be like the next big thing, but he is playing great hockey for what it's worth. I mean, Holloway, only 23 years old, just let me remind you of that, has played all 75 games with the Blues this season with 26 goals and 36 assists, giving him 62 points, okay? Plus 20 for the season with the Blues. And again, I have to think back to those offer sheets and how big that was for the Blues to get not only Dylan Holloway, but Philip Broberg. And another thing that I do want to say is I know the Blues' defense isn't that, exceptional. It's not that great. And I understand the concerns people really have around the defense because, again, the defense is an issue, the penalty kill is an issue, and I get that. But what I do want to say is having a player like a Ryan Suter, having a player like a Cam Fowler, both of those guys who are older, 40 and 39, have stepped up tremendously for the Blues. And with what it's worth, Ryan Suter is probably having one of his best seasons in the NHL in more recent years with the Blues this season. But besides those guys, I think that the Blues really just have this sense of passion, this sense of energy. And maybe that's due to a coaching change. I mean, people forget that Coach Montgomery, he was fired by the Bruins earlier in the season, and the Blues brought him in and they got rid of Drew Bannister. And for me, it is a little bit humorous in a way because Coach Montgomery, since being here, has averaged a point. I want to say a goal per game. Obviously a goal per game. I forget what the exact stat is, but no, the team has won a point per game. So yeah, it was something like that. I forget what the exact statistic is. So my apologies on that one. However, it is something really big. And I think that he could win the Jack Adams. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but I do feel like what he's done with this team is something that we saw back in 2019. In 2019, when the Blues went on to win the Stanley Cup, they were a team of underdogs. But I will say that the Blues on that team had more of veteran talent, with no due disrespect, with a Patrick Maroon and Ryan O'Reilly. Like, the team had some more talent when it came to the older players. However, I still feel like the talent that the Blues have within this team, it works. I mean, Jordan Kyrou, even, we don't even talk about him. Robert Thomas, who I talk about a lot. Jake Neighbors. I mean, I could go on and on about this team. But a player that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough is Nathan Walker. And he's like a little firecracker, ball of energy on the ice. But he really does make that fourth line what it is. And I love that WTF line. And that line, it works and they play very well together. So again, I had to jump on here because 9 straight wins is huge for the Blues. Biggest winning streak since October of 2022. And again, I do daily episodes on the St. Louis Blues where I break down everything that you need to know. But my excitement could not wait until tomorrow. So, if that being said, I will talk to you later and let's go Blues.